And so that there is a bit of a myth here as well, that there is a sort of entrepreneurial private sector that is doing things that the public sector can't. But around procurement, that is very often not the case. And in terms of outsourcing, a very excellent National Audit Office report about the NHS talked about the PFI contracts and in fact how the companies had secured outsourced NHS work that ring-fenced their profits, and it was the rest of the NHS that had to take the cut back, be it through doctors, nurses, medicines and beds and so on. So that this sort of mythology that exists around outsourcing, I think, is one that is not helpful to a constructive debate. And there's also another one which says that the private sector is always cheaper and more efficient than the public sector. And again, a couple of examples. We are organised in EDS, now Hewlett-Packard, but they had a bit of a rough time with the Inland Revenue, as it then was, in terms of their IT contract, the costs of which went from 3 billion to 9 billion over a period of time, and costs hugely more than were anticipated at great expense to the taxpayer. And similarly, what was now the HMRC sold off their whole estates to a company that was primarily based overseas, avoiding paying taxes to the HMRC, and that company made a loss. It was paid £136 million by HMRC, £81 million worth of which was banked in Bermuda, thereby avoiding paying tax in this country. So I think this, again, this mythology is one that we would say, yes, let's look at the evidence, let's find those things that the private sector does do and can do better, but not make an assumption that that is the whole of the public sector, because we've actually very pleased to hear the government announce recently that they wanted to put a stop on consultants, because that's an area where we say that there has been a huge amount of money wasted, that there's not been a skills transference, and much money could be much scope. And similarly, what our chair was saying, Colin, on procurement is something that we've argued about for a long, long time, that there's a huge amount of money wasted on procurement. But in both those areas, going back to my theme, that isn't going to result in more money in the private sector. That's actually going to be public sector money being used better, if you like, to deliver more for less. And it doesn't particularly save money, if you like, across the board. And what our worry is in the debate around public expenditure cuts at the moment is that outsourcing might be a better way to do some things, insourcing is a better way to do others, but is it going to be a huge miracle cure to the amount of money that needs to be saved in relation to the deficit and funding that? Our view is that there isn't, and our experience has been, is that there isn't a huge amount of money that is saved. It might come out of a different programme expenditure as opposed to an admin expenditure. It might transfer where that money is spent, but is the overall amount of money spent? Again, the experience tends to point to that not having been the case. And I suppose the last thing that gets up our nose a little bit when you have this discussion, just to end on a positive note, is that it sort of suggests that there can be no such thing as a public service ethos, that there is no motivation that drives people forward to do public services that you can value and cherish in its own way. And certainly our experience from our own members in the civil service, people in the NHS, people in lots of areas of public service, is that there is a genuine wish to work for others that brings a dimension to work, which is something that we ought to value and cherish. And certainly we do think there are things that are better in the public sector, that they aren't done for profit, they're done for social need or civic need, that they need to be publicly accountable, not commercially confidential, they need to be transparent, and they need to be the basis of long-term social planning, not just, if you like, private economic planning. And I think we'd want to make sure that those dimensions are taken into account. And so we take a pragmatic view, we get involved in the processes that are there. Our worry, I think, in all of these enthusiasms of new administrations is actually that they get driven not by the outcomes that affect the public services and the users of the services, be they delivered in the public or the private sector. It's about whether people can score political points or not. So it's a really nice opportunity to come and present a bit of an alternative. I suspect we'll have to do that a little bit more over the coming coming weeks and months. But certainly our view is going to be the thing that must drive the debate and the discussion is the quality of the public service and how that affects the end user of that public service. If that isn't what we're trying to achieve as a result of the process, then we're doing something wrong. Thanks very much.